Hello, baby birds. Welcome to my first YouTube video. To give a little introduction about me and the channel, I am a anarcho-capitalist, specifically Rothbardian, but I also enjoy egoism and Max Stirner's writings. I started my research only about 2 years ago, and I've been inspired by people like Mentis Wave, Liquid Zulu, Springtime and Nations, Praxbin, and MRH Legacy. I'm only 18 years old right now and just got into econ, politics, and history, so I'm kind of stupid because I've only been doing this, all four of these things, about 2 to 4 years. If you enjoy my research or want to see me grow, consider subscribing, and thank you. Hope you enjoy. Our first topic in the history of this channel will be why communism is inherently imperialistic. The video will be split into 5 parts, 3 being me, and two parts being features from 2 other channels, featuring Austrian teachers and Mr. Nick 10K. My 3 parts in order will be how communism is used to justify violence against the innocent, China's land reform as evidence, and Trotsky's radical view used as expansionism. Now you're probably wondering why my first video is a direct attack on leftist ideology. It is because I feel like leftist ideology is easily the most dangerous in the world, even worse than Nazism. It is an ideology based in authoritarianism, lack of liberty, theft, hate, and division. Communism is something I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. There is no freedom in an ideology that is based on collective and shared assets rather than the individual's human will for success. Now let's start with the basics. What is communism? Communism, described by its biggest contributor, Karl Marx, and most other leftist philosophers, is a classless, moneyless society aimed at the goal of turning the proletariat, aka the worker, laborers, etc., into a dominant state of power, or a dictatorship of the proletariat. It can also become stateless, as Marx theorized the need of the state would naturally fizzle out. Its goal is to eliminate the ruling elite class, also known as the bourgeoisie, or petty bourgeoisie. To achieve pure equality and spread all resources equally, or each according to their need, to be more specific, communists believe the bourgeoisie class is oppressive, exploitive, and too powerful. This means if said communist revolution would come to be and they refuse to give up their assets and resources, they will be met with either imprisonment or execution. This statement alone is how I will use a segue into my first topic. Communism being used to justify violence against the innocent is absolutely nothing new in history. We got gulags, the Berlin Wall, eugenics advocation under Pol Pot, concentration camps. Yes, Hitler was a socialist, but that is for another video in the future. About every single example of communism and socialism has ended in the mass suffrage of millions of lives simply because they believed in private property rights and tried to fight the state. But your average commie will say, oh, low-quality politics, that wasn't communism by its principles. It was a secret bourgeoisie power that wanted absolute power, not anything to do with the revolution. And to that I say 2 things. If your ideology always ends in a dictatorship against the people, maybe your ideology is the problem. Number 2, can we find evidence in a communist doctrine that this same thing would occur anyway? The answer is unsurprisingly yes. Communism isn't just after this ultra-rich bourgeoisie class. It's after the deniers of communism, aka the individual. According to Cambridge University, the labor theory of value holds that the bourgeoisie must impoverish the proletariat to the point of annihilation until it can take no more and lashes back in fury. But I ask where this line is specifically drawn and why it has yet to happen, even if Marx claimed it was scientific this would happen. We have plenty of groups today who call for absolute revolution, such as Antifa or any breadtuber fanbase ever, full of LARPing, nonsensical idiots. Despite the proletariat being better off than any other point in history, a current revolution wouldn't even be a war between the ultra-rich and worker. You'd be fighting all business owners, landlords, private property owners. These people are not just going to willingly give up their stuff or chunks of their nation for your silly revolution. Even if they are a worker, not everyone can be forced into an ideology through force. That is called imperialism, and where our first evidence comes from. From the same Cambridge study on the writings and teachings of Marx and Engels, we get some quotes from Engels. But this can only happen if a proletarian revolution is successful, carried out in Western Europe, and can extend the material conditions created by the previous capitalist economy necessary to carry it through. In other words, revolution could only occur in Russia, skipping the capitalist stage for now, but only if the material benefits of the capitalist means of production were available after the true revolution in the West. Engels here essentially wrote the script for Lenin: seize power politically by toppling the autocracy, hold on to the new state as a beacon until the true revolution takes place in Europe, and the proletariat can extend its assistance to complete Russia's socio-economic evolution. Here we see clearly as day, Engels is calling for an imperialist state in Western Europe, backed by communist Russian dictators, to support all these revolutions of the workers, so then, once Europe turns fully red against the views of millions, they can assist Russia in their revolution from socialism to communism. Let's take another theory of his book, of who Marx claims is the bourgeois and the proletariat. Here's a quote from Simply Psychology. The bourgeoisie would be the capitalist owners of private property and means of production, whereas the proletariat would sell their labor as their only way to survive. The bourgeoisie aims to make as much profit as possible in the marketplace, while paying the creators of the product as little as possible to maintain their own wealth. What we see here is the set definition of who Marx wants to overthrow, and it's not looking good for the people. Over 66% of people, according to Tip's Bulletin, own private property in some form. Now, a pushback to that would be, well, that's personal property. We are not against the owning of housing. Okay, let's get more specific. According to Statista, 7% of the American population owns a business. That is 24 million people that communists want to overthrow, seize, imprison, and even kill in what Marx calls a violent revolution. To put into perspective, how many people would be violently revolting against, assuming none of the business owners want to willingly give up what they made, that is equivalent to attacking everyone in the entire state of Florida. But of course, all small businesses aren't in Florida, they are in all states, meaning a revolution would spread everywhere. The collective hive mind is a devouring swarm that stops at no mercy of a private individual to achieve such a failed ideology. A communist may say, well, low-quality politics, you're just theorizing what would happen. A revolution of the worker wouldn't hurt small business owners or landowners or small landlords. To that I say you're dead wrong. In fact, that was the bulk of who they targeted in our example. The good old CCP. China's land reform movement was a period of time from 1953 to around early 1970s as its peak. Mao Zedong would send basically thug militants around the entire country searching for landlords, business owners, and literally random people, despite the fact that these people were treating their tenants' employees well. Mao told his thugs to round up these people on their property and gather all their proletarians so they could watch their landlord, boss, or some random dude be publicly tortured to death. And once they died, they didn't even properly distribute. They left it for plunder. The thugs and proletarians would just ransack the property for all it has, not even putting it to actual use. He would often even persecute his own party members and title them counter-revolutionaries, just so he could persecute them in public to gain more political power and dominance over China. China targeted innocent property owners for decades, killing somewhere between 200,000 and 2 million people and another 3 million arrested. That means in the worst case, 5 million people were persecuted and killed for simply owning land, not actually being an evil billionaire. Communism is also incredibly oppressive of varying ideas. On June 8, 1957, the CCP announced the existence of the anti-communist class, which he said consisted of 5% of the population, and these people were labeled rightists. This not only led to mass slavery in the form of labor camps, but even if they behaved, the title rightist would be permanently put on their records, which ruined careers and made it impossible to integrate into society. The people who got the label would most often unalive themselves because they would get beaten, abused, and rejected from any worker union. Some were even exiled to eastern China.
Hello, my little fans. It's me, Nick Cool, from the Mr. Nick 10K YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to, by the way. Since I'm super cool and with art, I'm going to explain your life under a communist revolution. You ready? So, let's say recent events led your country to a violent revolution, but you live peacefully in a happy community away from major cities. But these bums, they walk up and they're like, "You're exploiting the workers here, and property is illegal, and you're lame." But you say to the revolutionaries, "Nah," and that your community is wealthy and peaceful. But no, these bums will imprison you or allow people to loot your property because you denied their ideology. Now, you're super sad living in a commie block that is basically a slum, working on a farm every single day, just for basic needs with no chance of growth. Oh, I'm noticing growth. Was that good?
I come from a land that once stood behind the Iron Curtain of the Soviet Union. These fences weren't to keep capitalists out. They caged people in.
August 19th, 1989, the Pan-European Picnic, a symbolic party staged by Hungarian reformers and Austrian idealists. Hungary opened the border for just a few hours, a test run. Hundreds of East Germans dashed through the gap in the curtain.
Schnell! Dort vorne ist das Gasthaus von meiner Mitzitant.
So ein Schnitzel gab's bei uns nie. Danke, danke, danke.
Mitzitant, warum hilfst du den Fremden?
Das sind ja a Deutsche wie mir. Freilich mir's ma ina höfen.
When rulers fear their own people, they build walls, always to lock citizens in, not merely to keep outsiders out.
Now, back to me. In the form of Trotsky. Trotsky is the biggest evidence that communism involves expansionism, imperialism. He often talked about the global and eternal revolution is most of his writings. He had zero thought for societies that didn't want socialism or communism. He thought a society would best function in a constant state of revolution. What does this permanent revolution entail for the common non-socialist man? According to Marx and Engels, it means a revolution of zero compromise or alliance. That literally means no reasoning can stop the slaughter of these ideological fanatics. And to put a cherry on top, Trotsky added onto this idea, saying that once the first late-stage capitalist nation is overthrown, which is always a violent one by theory, that the exact same violent revolution will be spread to normal capitalist societies. This isn't just a fight for a worker. This is a global imperialist mob who seeks to destroy all opinions contradicting their own. It is a hive mind of violence, a collective consciousness of oppression, a swarm of abhorrent to other kinds of thought. Thank you for tuning in to my very first video. I know the editing and audio are absolute diarrhea, but if I get a lot of support, maybe I can go from low quality politics to high quality. Thank you again, and good night.